Welcome to the WORKOLOGY podcast, Welcome to the WORKOLOGY podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrill, founder of WORKOLOGY.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of WORKOLOGY.
The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, estimates that every year nearly 2 million U.S. workers are victims of workplace violence. There is so much divisiveness right now in our lives, and as HR pros and leaders, we need tools to better help communicate and build relationships. I think of the increase of workplace bullying and just all the situations that you and your family and your employees might be facing. I wanted to bring in an expert to talk about conflict resolution and communication that can help de-escalate situations that make our lives and our workplace unsafe. Welcome to the WORKOLOGY podcast. We're sponsored by Clear Company. It's not just safety I'm thinking about, but also how we as leaders can better communicate with each other and our employees. Communication is so important, and it's a skill we all need to learn and improve upon that will impact so many different parts of our lives, personally and professionally. Let's talk with an expert to help us improve our communication skills. I'm joined by Jill Camp-Melton. She's the founder and president for Strategies for Living Unlimited and the author of The Power of the Zip, Trigger a Tsunami of Transformation, One Conversation at a Time. Jill, welcome to the WORKOLOGY podcast.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be a part of this.
Let's talk a little bit about your background. Can you talk about how you got here as an author and professional consultant and communicator?
I have been training managers and executives since 1991, and what hit me almost from the start is the discrepancy between what companies and government agencies say that they do and what they actually do. Too often, supervisors and managers have no idea how to achieve the leadership values that they espouse. And as I was coaching people and I saw this culture, I began to see that if I could pull people back to the values, show them what they are doing that helps and what they are doing that hurts, it would improve the work culture tremendously. So I have worked for almost every single government agency and department as a contractor, also in the nonprofit world and outside of government. So I've seen this. This is a common thread.
One of the things I feel like we've been focusing on this podcast is arming HR and recruiting leaders for tools and resources to be able to help them as individuals, but also to be able to help their leaders. So I appreciate the work that you're doing because I think everybody can agree here that we could always do a better job as a leader at communicating with our teams and to our peers.
Yes.
If someone is considering moving into a leadership role, what particular areas of communication should they focus on improving?
Number one, listening is key. Number two, listening. Number three, listening. Really hearing what others say and what they don't say. Learning how to take in the measure of a person accurately. Uncover their blind spots and your own blind spots. And it's very important to refuse to make assumptions and refuse to take personal offense on the job.
That's a lot harder than it sounds.
Yes. And that's so often we need coaches, and even coaches need coaches. One of my coaches, Dr. Pat Williams, he's in Colorado now, he emphasized that to me very early on. Don't be afraid to have other people coach you as you coach the people you work with, the people you're trying to help, and your whole work team.
How are communication and conflict resolution integrated when you develop specific workplace-specific training?
Well, in my opinion, if you work with people, you will have conflict. There's nothing wrong with that because we're all human. What's wrong is how we deal with the conflict. Do we escalate it without even knowing? Do we pollute the conflict in light of our own biases and our core values? So learning to deal with conflict so that all parties are better for the process should be the goal. And if you find that you're insisting on being right, you need to go back and take another training in conflict resolution. It's not a matter of who is right. It's a matter of what common ground do we have and how can we get along well together.
I love it. I think that's so important, and not just in the workplace, but family, friends, neighbors, all those things.
Yes.
This week, I had the opportunity to speak at a master's degree program at St. Ed's here in Austin, Texas, and the class is on culture and complexities and leadership. So I was thinking about our conversation that we would be having. I wish that I had it prior to talking with the class, but we talked a lot about culture. And so I did want to ask you your thoughts on company culture and how maybe HR can play a better role in workplace communication for teams.
There has to be a neutral party in any company culture. All company cultures, in my opinion, are skewed by politics. Some people have the power, some people want the power, and rarely do the powerful and the weak peacefully coexist without conflict. It's the job of HR to train the powerful and the weak in a company culture to respect one another and work well together. Now, if you do this, you are daring to be the mature leader who walks the talk and who coaches from within. We coach up, we can coach down, we can coach sideways. Can you handle being unique is the key question you need to ask yourself. Even if nobody else is doing what you know is the right thing to do, can you still do it? So I think these things are very important, especially when you have the helpful values. You can create a coaching culture where everyone is free to coach one another without feeling criticized.
I love this because one of the things that I got asked during this class, and I believe it's true, but it's very rare, is that change can come from the bottom versus the top, like culturally. But that really starts with what you just referred to as mature leadership, being able to have a conversation, to get feedback and really listen and make changes regardless of where the person who's making the suggestion or the change is coming from in the organization.
You know, you just said feedback, and you didn't specifically ask me about feedback, but this is a freebie. Feedback is what you saw and what you heard and the impact that it had. Feedback is a gift. If it doesn't feel like a gift, it's not feedback.
I'm taking notes. I love that. Feedback is a gift. But as a coach, and the clients that you work with, they are hiring you to give them honest feedback and insights to help be able to move forward. And I find that managers, that's really the key to understanding how to be a better leader or to create a culture is that feedback. Do you agree?
Yes, and they don't know how to give feedback. I have a workbook that goes with my book. The Power of the Zip is the book, and the workbook is Let's Work It Out, The Power of the Zip Workbook. And you can get them both on Amazon, and in it there's a huge chapter on feedback. If I need to give feedback and say, you know, Susan, when you made that presentation, I heard lots of facts. I heard lots of case studies, and I didn't hear the thread that pulled them all together so I would know how to put it into action. So the impact of that was that I was lost, although there was a lot of good information. Can you help me get to the next step? So I didn't tell Susan that her presentation was crappy and that I didn't know what she was talking about. I told her what I heard, what was missing, and can she help get me to to find the right pieces that we're missing. That's a gift because she knows what to do, and she doesn't feel personally attacked, and she's not going to go home and beat herself up. If she is at all mature or even has a dot of wanting to improve herself, she's going to say, can you show me how to do that? And I'll say, absolutely, let's do it right now.
That is very different than sometimes feedback I hear from others who say, I didn't get that, I didn't understand anything.
Right.
I like your approach, because if the person is open, and hopefully they are, they can use that. They don't feel, like you said, personally attacked, and they can use that feedback to be better, which I think is what most of us want. We want to be better at our jobs, better spouses, better partners, better friends.
Exactly.
Let's take a reset. This is Jessica Miller Merrill, and you're listening to the Workology podcast sponsored by Clear Company. We're talking about improving workplace communication with Jill Camp Melton.
Podcast support provided by Clear Company, a complete talent management platform designed to help small and medium-sized companies hire, retain, and engage A players. Visit clearcompany.com to sign up for a free personalized demo.
I'm sure you get this question a lot. However, I really want to know, and I think those who are listening in, the book is called The Power of the Zip. So what's the zip?
Okay, now just sit back for a minute and close your eyes. I'm actually going to read you a couple paragraphs from the first chapter. The power of the zip is what happens when you speak with someone else and you keep quiet for as long as it takes for the other person to contribute. The power of the zip allows other people to discover themselves first and gives them permission to think in front of you, and it doesn't matter who speaks first. It creates a safe environment where people can share without penalty, and people will trust you more in the process. The zip unleashes the power of weight, helping you calm down. The zip gives you time for your thoughts and feelings to catch up with the speed of events happening around you. It gives you the opportunity to find out more about other people and adds to your credibility, because listening makes you seem wise. For me, the most important part of the zip is that it awakens my sense of curiosity about others and the way things might work. A colleague of mine says, I wonder what they'll come up with that I don't know about. An active mind and a sincere interest in learning keeps us on the edge of new things until the day we die. And without this sense of curiosity and wonder, we are the walking dead.
This is great. As you're talking, I'm thinking this is the exact reason why I do this podcast, right? Because I want to connect with different people and hear their points of view, their stories, and their knowledge. And it's so easy to be just that talking head that just talks, and doesn't take the time to learn from others.
Yes.
I love it. I feel like what you're describing, it sounds like a really awesome culture and a person who is a trusted advisor and friend.
That is the dream. That is the image, and I've actually seen it happen.
How does listening play a role in workplace communication? Maybe for a difficult leader who isn't listening, like how can we help explain to them that this is such an important part of being a great leader in an organization?
Well, the first thing is I'm going to look at the sentence you just said. How can we explain to them? Unfortunately, we can't, because nobody is going to change because you or I say they have to change. But in my book, I have assessments that people take all by themselves. And after they take the assessment, they will begin to realize what they are doing that gets in the way of good listening. So what's required to be a good listener? You have to be willing to suspend yourself and be in the present with another person. You have to be curious. You have to be bold. And the things that get in the way of our listening are fear, negative experiences, prejudices, assumptions, biases, what other people think, what we think other people think, and the limitations of what we know. If we are selfish and self-centered, it will be hard to listen openly to others. We have to be quiet inside to listen to someone else. And when you take any of these assessments in the book, the assessment itself holds a mirror up to you. So no one is telling you you have to reboot. You see it very clearly. Oh my, I better do this another way or I'm not going to be effective.
This is so true. And I think I'm hearing you talk and speak, and I'm thinking about my 10-year-old daughter. And when I tell her that she is going to do something and it's going to be this way, she doesn't do what I ask, but generally. But if she comes to that conclusion herself, she is almost always likely to do exactly what I wanted her to do from the beginning. But she, like you said, put a mirror up to herself and said, oh, well, this way would be easier and here's why, or it would, make for a better experience, or mom and I will get along better. Yeah,
it's so exciting because I've been coaching a woman recently who has been using these techniques with her 18-year-old daughter. She's getting ready to go to college, and all of a sudden, the daughter is looking at this woman, her mother, in a totally new way. She said, Mom, I wish you found this book 5 years ago, but I'm so glad you have it now.
I love it. Well, let's talk a little bit more about conflict resolution. I want to hear for myself because I have a soon-to-be preteen. I mean, she's 10. But then I also think about workplace conflict and things that escalate and maybe lead to unsafe situations. I think most of us that are probably listening on the podcast have had a situation like that at work where we felt unsafe or yelling and screaming or things really got out of control, whether it was an investigation or a termination or a performance review. Can you maybe talk us through just some basics on why conflict happens and then maybe some kind of ideas in terms of how to de-escalate these situations?
There will be less conflict if hiring practices were changed, if the people who do the hiring were better listeners. There will be less conflict if, when managers talk to their direct reports, if they don't wait until performance reviews to give feedback and to coach sideways, up and down. Dream with me for a minute. What if almost every conversation a manager has with a direct report included feedback? When you gave that presentation to the executives today, I saw them taking notes, and it was a great nonverbal feedback that they wanted to remember what you were saying. Thanks for filling your presentation with so much information. Or when you gave that presentation today, I saw people taking notes, and then I saw a lot of puzzled expressions. And I'm wondering what you might have done to include that into your presentation rather than see it as an annoyance. So asking these great kinds of coaching questions, 90% of the conversations that leaders have should be coaching conversations so that everyone feels safe giving coaching and receiving coaching. And then you create a coaching culture. Unsafe workplaces are workplaces where people are not free to talk or even vent sometimes. And in my book, I even talk about, why don't you have just like whining Mondays? On Monday, everybody is allowed to whine and complain and vent. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they have to become problem solvers. So there are lots of ways to be creative in a work culture where there will be less terminations, less hostility, and people they'll be saying to one another and to their bosses, how can I make sure that I am a significant part of what we're doing? I just love being here.
So oftentimes when I'm listening to people talk in presentations or podcasts, I make notes, which I feel like is helpful. And here's one of the thing that really resonated with me, and I will put this in the transcript of the podcast, is like the tweetable nugget of what you said, and it was 90% of conversations that leaders have should be coaching conversations. And I think about me as a leader and my team. 90% of my conversations are not coaching conversations, and they very much should be. We should be checking in with our people. We should be giving them feedback on performance, allowing them time for questions, and having that kind of place where people can come forward and say, hey, I didn't get that, or you gave me some feedback. Here's some feedback for you from maybe a presentation or something that you did recently.
That's really good, Jessica. I'm thinking as you are talking that when we create a coaching culture, the power lines dissolve and everyone has permission to participate. That's big.
So how can we catch these things before we really fail? I mean, what's the solution here? Hopefully it's to pick up your book and your workbook or bring you in sooner rather than later. But how can we catch these things?
Well, because we spend so much time at work becomes, in a way, more important than our family. So our conversations deteriorate into family conversations as opposed to work and strategic kinds of conversations. Not that we can't be personal occasionally, but we need to be very clear, and when the temptation to get involved in that kind of conversation occurs, to just say, sidebar, just 1 minute. I just need to tell you that outfit you're wearing is sensational, or whatever. But it's a sidebar. So we have to police ourselves, and we have to look more at being mature in interviews, even in water cooler talk. I don't know, do they still have water coolers in the workplace? Or does everybody just bring their own bottles? But that kind of, wherever people hang out, kitchen, window with a view, wherever people hang out, we need to challenge ourselves to be more mature in our conversation and in our daily interactions and in performance reviews and in orientation. The way you handle orientation is the most important predictor of how that person is going to fit into the culture and become a valuable member. Too often, we just blow off the orientation, happens in 5 minutes, or it's delayed a week or 2 weeks, and it's no longer relevant. And instead of just doing your check-ins for performance review, do weekly check-ins. You could even use, daily check-ins if you manage by walking around. And if you work in a virtual workplace, you can still manage by walking around by doing a quick text or a quick phone call, just to see how's it going, to encourage the team members. These are all some ways that we can help.
Well, Jill, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Where can people go to learn more about you, your book, and the work that you do?
My website, strategiesforlivingunlimited.com, has some more information. And you can always send me an email through that website. And I'm very responsive, and you can ask me a question, and I will respond back.
Oh, thank you so much. I am picking up a copy of your book right now, and I think one for every member of my team. This is fantastic.
Thank you. I tell you, if everyone has the book and the workbook, you can all start working through it together and challenge each other. And if it comes up to this, challenge me.
Awesome. Jill's company, Strategies for Living Unlimited, is a woman-owned small business, diverse and innovative transformational change agency with a mission to promote the use of effective training and coaching to build bridges of understanding and lessen conflict. I think sometimes we forget how much pressure is on us as HR leaders and just people in general to maintain a conflict-free, open, and engaging workplace or just life. All of the above hinge on the strength of our ability to communicate, and I appreciate Jill's insights. Thank you for joining the Workology podcast, sponsored by Clear Company. This podcast is for the disruptive workplace leader, disruptive in a good way, who's tired of the status quo. This is Jessica Miller Merrill. Until next time, visit workology.com to listen to all our previous podcast episodes.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller Merrill provided by TotalPicture.com.